Welcome back, everybody. I hope you all are doing well mentally, physically, and emotionally. I'm Zach Cronin, and I've been waiting for this day for a long time. Today, November 1st, officially the start of Christmas season, marks the day that the Brooklyn Nets have decided to move on from Steve Nash. It's been reported by every major reporter. Shams tweeted about it, Woj tweeted about it, Mark Stein tweeted about it, and the Brooklyn Nets themselves tweeted about it. Now, everybody used varying verbiage. Woj used the term fired. Shams used the term, Shams said that it was mutual between the two parties, but regardless, the fact remains that Steve Nash will no longer be head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. Now, before shooting this video, I was trying to write up a script and just to try to organize my thoughts, but as this news cycle has progressed, it's gotten better and then it was weird, and now it's just not very good at all. So before we get into like all of the backstory, I'll just come out and say it. The Brooklyn Nets have moved on from Steve Nash to Ime Udoka, who is currently suspended from the Boston Celtics organization for having a relationship with a coworker, but the suspension part of it came because there was some unsavory dialogue communicated from Udoka to this female employee, and it just turned into a really gross abuse of power situation, just a very toxic dynamic in the workplace, which ultimately led to his suspension. Now, full disclosure, when this news originally broke, I didn't think the situation was as severe as it was, and I made a YouTube video about it, and I said in that YouTube video that if more information comes out, I will not be so questioning of the Celtics' motives because their decision to suspend him was come to after an independent investigation, but the findings of which had not been released until later. So, after seeing how far Udoka took this situation, I see where they're coming from. Originally, I thought that this was just because it was a violation of team policy, and a season long suspension for a consensual relationship between two employees does not constitute that suspension. Of course, this was without the knowledge of the toxic circumstances surrounding this situation. Now, Steve Nash is an enigmatic figure to Nets Nation. If you've been following me for any length of time, you know that I was not a fan of the Steve Nash hiring. Pardon me. I was not a fan of his hiring. I was optimistic though. When you look at the circumstances of when he was hired, it was September of 2020. The Nets were coming off of the Mickey Mouse Championship, the Mickey Mouse Championship run, the bubble run where COVID was ravaging the entire planet. That was also the first season after which they had signed Kyrie and KD, both of whom were pretty much non-existent during that season. Kevin, of course, was rehabbing from his Achilles injury, and Kyrie was barely present, played only 20 games, and that was only 1 year removed from this team miraculously managing to make the playoffs with D'Angelo Russell being their best player, him just going on this torching run in the second half of that season. And to reach the hiring of Steve Nash, they had to get rid of Kenny Atkinson, whom I loved very. I loved Kenny's coaching style. He was fiery. He was passionate. He was great with player development. Many folks in Nets Nation and Nets Twitter feel the same way about him. But in regards to him actually coaching, he was not that great. Really had all of the same problems that Steve Nash did, and I think it was because Atkinson he wasn't a rookie head coach at the time, but he was a first time head coach, and he had shown flashes and he had progressed, but ultimately his time was running out. Players were beginning to tune him out in the locker room, it feels like. And then of course when you bring on guys like Kyrie and KD, you need a new head coach, a guy who knows how to handle championship talent, a guy who knows how to deal with championship caliber egos. And so we were talking about, of course, Tyronn Lue and Becky Hammon and Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson, because we always talk about JVG and Mark Jackson when a coaching search is happening. And then Steve Nash emerges as the front runner for multiple reasons. He has a relationship with Sean Marks from their days in San Antonio, I believe, or maybe not in San Antonio, but they had some sort of relationship together There was also his connection to Kevin Durant. He was a consultant to the Golden State Warriors, although I don't believe he was officially a member of the organization in any like formal way, but there was a connection between him and Steve Nash, and ultimately that is whom the Brooklyn Nets decided to bring on as their coach. Again, I didn't like it. I thought that there were better options available, but I was optimistic about it because you never know. Maybe he became a Greg Popovich level figure, someone who with minimal coaching experience just turns around a franchise, and it's safe to say he did not do that. And again, much like with Kenny Atkinson, a below average coach at best, despite what Nash's record says. I think he's got like a 55% winning percentage. Beyond all that, this guy just does not know how to coach. He does not have it. His rotations are weird. His playbook is drier than Moses' nose after spending 40 years in the desert. Simply not cut out to be the head coach of a contending team at this point. And I think a lot of this is not the fault of his lack of basketball knowledge. I think it's his lack of experience in a coaching role. Mind you, not only was he a rookie head coach, he didn't even have assistant coaching experience. Never had like a formal relationship within an NBA organization. Never understood how to just do all of the minutia of being an NBA coach behind the scenes, constructing a playbook, managing egos, because all of that is different when you're their head coach. After he gets hired, some folks are like,
I can't believe that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving wanted this guy.
and I was like, yeah, I don't really understand it either. Because when you have stars of their caliber, you always do what they want you to. You, as the front office people, the GM, whoever, you always consult your stars when it comes to really anything. And Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving seemingly picked Steve Nash to be that guy, but multiple reports have stated that this is simply not the case. Nash was brought into this role because Cy and Marks wanted him there, not necessarily because KD and Kyrie wanted him there. They ultimately signed off on his hiring. They gave their support, so they are by no means removed from any culpability, but Nash was not the brainchild of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Now, his firing, it does not come as a surprise to me. I wish it had happened sooner, whether it be at the end of last season or during the summer when, Kevin Durant gave them that ultimatum where he's like, it's either me or them. I think that would have been an appropriate time to fire him because we all knew that this was not going to work. Even with all of the off the court shit going on, Steve Nash is unfit to coach this team and will be unfit to coach this team until he accumulates experience elsewhere. So to do it 7 games into the season, to do it after you barely beat the Indiana Pacers, after that fucking disgusting showing that it was against the Pacers a few nights ago, just with everything, with how bad they've looked on the court this year, this could have all been avoided. You could have dispatched him in the summer and kept Jacques Vaughn as the interim, or maybe even promote him to be the full time head coach. That would have been my decision. I like Jacques Vaughn a lot, and I believe he's earned that right. But just from everything we've seen on the court, Steve Nash is unfit to be the coach. Some folks may look towards the Kyrie controversy and chalk that up as, Nash's fault as well. And I do understand that, but I don't want to get too much into the Kyrie thing because I spoke about it on my podcast and I'm going to post it on YouTube at some point. This is not that is not singularly Steve Nash's fault. That is a way bigger issue that Steve Nash doesn't have much control over, and really it would have taken the Nets organization as a whole and also people close to Kyrie to deal with that situation. But I think that Steve Nash was fired strictly because of his on-court performance, and for that I 100% get it. Now, this is oh Christ, this is why it's bittersweet because and this whole second half of the video is going to be basketball, yes, but it really is a great indicator of where we are as just like an economy and how businesses are set up to run. So let me not bury the lead here. Ime Udoka, I think I already mentioned it, so I can't even really be burying the lead, but Ime Udoka is going to be the next head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. Now, the Nets did their due diligence on Ime Udoka, and basically, their due diligence was 20 minutes worth of reading the ESPN report that Woj and his colleagues have written up. Really, just a bizarre decision all the way around. But although it is not a decision that I agree with, I 100% do not agree with them hiring Ime Udoka for multiple reasons. The first, and of course, this isn't the obvious reason because the obvious reason doesn't have to be mentioned, but I feel that Jacques Vaughn should be the head coach of this team. He's been with the team for many years. He understands how the organization operates. He understands how this team operates. And also, he seems to be a pretty damn good head coach. He went 7-3 with the Nets in the bubble with a roster that fucking included Chris Chiozza playing point guard. So he can definitely coach. He's been around the league for a while. I'm sure the players respect him tremendously. And also, it's like he's earned the right to be the head coach of this team. And again, just like with him being around the team for so many years, the second reason is the more obvious reason, and it's because of all of the controversy surrounding Ime Udoka. And I mean, this is not a decision that I'm shocked by because, and I don't know if like folks are privy to this information, but the Brooklyn Nets do not have any morals. They do not have any values. And they do not have any values because they are a capitalist structure. The NBA and its teams will not have values. They will never be progressive because that does not align with their business model. Their business model is making money and winning championships. And they will do whatever it takes to maximize both of those outcomes. It is no different. The theory of what they do is no different than what Apple does, than what Nestle does, than what pretty much every massive corporation does. They exploit people. It's obviously a different level, like than exploiting laborers in China, or if you're like Nestle and utilizing child slaves, stuff like that. It's a different kind of exploitation. But ultimately, since the Brooklyn Nets are a capitalist structure, they don't give a fuck about the moves that they make unless that move is detrimental to them winning a championship or making money. And the unfortunate reality is that Ime Udoka is a damn good head coach. I don't think that's a hot take. He's a controversial figure, yes, but he's good at coaching. He just took the Boston Celtics to the finals. Does that absolve him of all of the bullshit that he's done? No. Should he be the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets? No. I don't think he should be, and I want to make that abundantly clear. But you cannot be an NBA fan and just be. I don't feel that NBA fans can be shocked when NBA teams do corporate shit because that's what they is. Another level of this corporatism is that the Brooklyn Nets fucked up and did the most corporate thing possible by not doing the right thing when they should have. And then they fucked around for 2 years before doing the right thing when it is now the wrong thing to do. You could have avoided all of this and hired Ime Udoka, a guy who also has a connection. I believe, yes, he has a connection to Sean Marks through the Spurs. I don't know why I was thinking of Steve Nash, but he checks all of the boxes that Steve Nash checked. He was a decent player, spent many years as an assistant under Greg Popovich, of all people. I also believe he was an assistant to Doc Rivers. Don't quote me on that, but I think I remember seeing that somewhere. And then also an assistant to the Brooklyn Nets. He was one of the guys that they should have been considering. And ultimately, they did not. And they're just making the situation worse and worse and worse. Now, just circling back to the overarching point of the Brooklyn Nets having no values, no morals, not being progressive, keep in mind that the NBA is not really a progressive organization either, because the NBA is controlled by 30 multi hundred millionaires, multi billionaires, whatever. They will always try to do what is best for them. Before the union existed, they resisted before the union existed. the league pushed back against unionization efforts because that's what corporations do. Every time there's a new CBA, the NBA teams always try to fuck over the union, and the union doesn't allow it because they're able to collectively bargain, which is huge. But also, when you think about how NBA teams exploit their fans, charging a fucking arm and a leg to be able to go to games, charging an arm and a leg for all of the concessions, for all of the food, for all of the drinks, and also exploiting the arena workers by paying them minimum wage, whatever the minimum wage may be. It's just I'm not surprised that when corporate shit boils over into the NBA, like into the actual front facing portion of the league, because unfortunately, there is an immense amount of politics in all sports, regardless of whether people want to believe it or not. I forgot who said it, but there's some quote that's along the lines of politics, whenever power is in play, it's always politics. And because politics is the transfer of power. So this is again part of a larger issue that the NBA has to address and has to clean up, and it's how certain groups of people are not treated fairly within their organization. I mean, we also saw it when the NBA initially did not come down with a hard enough punishment on Robert Sarver. And it's the same thing. It's the same issues that they have to tackle. It's the same inequalities that they have to tackle. I really think that's all I have to say on this situation. I'm pretty certain I covered all my points. Nash firing good, Ime Udoka hiring bad for multiple reasons. That's really the TLDR of my take, is that I agree with firing Steve Nash. I don't agree with hiring Ime Udoka, but I do see why they did it. And no, I do not agree with that line of thinking from a basketball perspective, and just from a PR perspective. Jacques Vaughn would have been the proper choice to go with. So, um, yeah, I'm gonna end it here. Be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn the bell notification on as well. Check out my podcast, Hedging Screens, available wherever you listen to podcasts, and I will catch you guys in the next one.